let's go to the Johnny Chaos thing. So let's talk about hex parity. This is something that people get very heated about in terms of EX is dead. I mean, there's still those people out there that are rooting against it. And, RH tweeted about it and like just don't understand the concept that like, shooting it off also does hurt the rest of the ecosystem. And we saw that whenever Richard made that tweet, which I don't think that was his intention necessarily. He simply had an observation and then things went a little bit of haywire, but shit happens, whatever. But we are seeing EHEX recover really nicely against Hex anyway, ratio wise since that. And if you want to bring up that Johnny Chaos tweet, I am intrigued to have you kind of break down what he said. I sent that to you in a DM. I think you have it. Because it's interesting. It's something that I don't think many people have thought about. So everybody, it's been common knowledge, like Hex is going to be, they're not going to be a parity. It's not going to work that way. Hex has been more valuable than EHEX for quite some time now. And, maybe EHEX will be the people have talked about like, oh, maybe that'll be the whale version of Hex because they'll be the ones that want to pay the staking fees and all that stuff. Just so many different narratives that people have been trying to figure out. And frankly, good arguments from both sides. I mean, I've seen stuff where, like, just the other day, Hexologist tweeted, like, dude, a stake for me on Ethereum 3 years is costing me $300 or $500 to unstake, and it's 20 cents on Pulse Chain. And then everybody's like, yeah, exactly. This is why Pulse Chain was created, which is true. Like, yeah, no doubt about it. And those fees are going to be even worse in the bull market as it rages on here. But there are other things to consider as well. So here's Johnny Chaos. And I like where Johnny's been on this the entire time because he's just taken this exact same approach. And I appreciate it. He says, a word of caution, the OA can choose to lock that ratio between the hexes at wherever it decides at any time. If it would like to maintain a premium on its own chosen chain, it can. Nothing any of us can do about it. My suggestion would be let it go to 1-to-1, then lock it, which would be crazy. There would be no room for argument or confusion anymore. Hex would just be Hex, a universal conduit between chains. He goes on there. I don't know if you want to scroll down. I'm actually reading from your display here. All right. Whoa. Okay, there you go. And not just because it makes me right, because the conclusion was based on what would be the healthiest for the entire system. And exactly, and I think that's where Johnny's always coming from. He's not trying to be right. He's talking about the market, the ecosystem, what would make the most sense. Many of those nasty imaginary horribles I feared, well, we saw exactly that. So I don't know if there's any other part of that you want to look at, but I'm interested on your comments on that, Ewok, because I think Johnny has some insight that other people don't. And I like where he's coming from there, and it would be very interesting. I mean, I don't know that we'll see a lock like that. I know he's talking about what he would do, but my God, that would be interesting. So what do you make about that?
Well, in order to make that happen, all you're doing basically is buying one side up, selling the other until it evens out, and then throwing a bunch of liquidity in from the OA to keep that ratio locked the same. I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't. I think, Richard wants people to move to Pulse Chain for a reason, because it's cheaper. However, I wouldn't be upset if it got locked at that ratio. I don't see it being 1-to-1. I could see it forever being 0.75 to 1. I definitely don't see it being 1-to-2, because then if you do get to $5, then you're at $2.50 on the other side. It just really starts to have a disparity, the higher it gets. So I don't think they're going to step in. I don't think anybody will step in to set a ratio, but it is possible. Again, when you do get heavy liquidity like that, though, between those two coins, it does make it heavy. And I don't know that anybody could really ruin that ratio. So it is possible. And that is how it would be done. But I just don't see that happening. I don't see it. I think people like to allow the market to decide things. I think, the market has chosen at that point. The market could choose again. Things could reverse. Now, I don't see that happening. However, they could, right? I mean, I think that's part of the letting the free markets dictate and decide what they like better, and go from there. But yeah, I mean, It's an interesting thing. Johnny has always had that position. I've always had that position is why not just keep both? Like, don't try and make the right decision.
Yeah.
You and I both have bought more of both of them. And we recommend it for people because one of them is going to run a lot higher. One of them is a lot cheaper too. So you're going to see some probably similar gains out of both chains. They're going to be different, but it's not a bad play. Now, staking, unstaking, as things get busier, as things pick up, we've already seen it a little bit. Gas fees go up. That will be tricky for smaller bag holders to stake and unstake and things like that on the Ethereum side. So, one could serve as a just hold it kind of token on the ETH side, and one could serve as a staking on the Pulse side because of the fees, because of the benefits that you get from the cheaper chain. But yeah, it's going to, again, it doesn't come down to who's right, who's wrong. It just, everybody likes to talk about their ideas. So.
I was laughing at what Fast Abdul just said here. He compared Johnny to the P Die guys a minute ago, which I think was partially a joke, obviously, but the OA could also create a global marshmallow shortage by buying all marshmallows and burning them. Bullish on marshmallows. So I get where you're coming from. I mean, I don't think that I don't think that necessarily we'll see them like pegged together like that necessarily. Funny to use the word peg there. But yeah, it is really interesting. And you just brought up a good point that I wanted to highlight, Ewok, talking about, HEX, maybe people will be less likely to stake it just because who the hell knows what you're dealing with Ethereum fees, especially, well, regardless of what the stake length are that you're doing. But keep in mind, like you can buy EHEX on Pulse Chain. And that's what, if you wanted to get exposure to it, that's what I would recommend that people do. And that's what I have done. And as I have been having any stakes come out on Ethereum, if I've been deciding not to restake them on there, because, to be frank, like I don't know what we're going to see there. I would rather just bridge all of my EHEX over to Pulse Chain. You will get the copy of it right over. I mean, not a copy, but like whenever there was a snapshot, but you'll have it bridged over. It'll maintain the same value, and you're not going to have to deal with Ethereum fees if you would buy it, sell it, whatever you want to do with it. Now, you cannot stake it there. It's still an Ethereum smart contract, but we also know that Alex McWhirter has been working on a lot of things with Icosa Hedron, combining those two tokens. And we think part of that is maybe, hopefully, the ability to somehow stake EHEX on Pulse Chain. Now, we don't know that for sure, but just the fact that that's a possibility, that something like that could be coming. He's been at it for a long time and he's been relatively quiet, but just the fact that that's a possibility, and at the very least, just so you could actually sell those tokens on a chain that doesn't have high fees, I would just bridge it over to Pulse Chain. That's what I've been doing with all my EHEX. So, yeah, but just the possibility of Alex working on something like that, I would want to be in that position and be positioned for it. So,
Yeah, and don't forget all the free stuff that comes out of it too.
mhm.
Like you said, with the E hedron and the P hedron and the E icosa, PIE. So I get what Degen Moonboy said here. People won't even understand what the E and the P mean, but
True.
they will, and people have to understand. We've talked about this before. The bridges, or not the bridges, but the on ramps, the off ramps are all closer to the Ethereum side. It's an easier onboarding for people to get into things and out of things, without having to bridge. Now we do have the bridge, we do have Coast, we do have the other protocols that are popping up here and there on how to get directly into Pulse Chain. It's going to take a little while till those become popularized, I guess the word would be. But remember, your on and off ramps are just as important because that's where the money's coming in and out from. So you can't forget about the Ethereum side of things and the volume on chain, the money that's on chain, the things that can be traded in and out of to get to there. So yeah, it's going to take a little while for things to even out and for Pulse Chain just to be Pulse Chain on its own. But right now we're kind of piggybacking on Ethereum, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. DJ and Moonboy said earlier that like some people could come into the ecosystem or at least come into Hex by buying it on Ethereum. And many people have said that like it's closer to the indoor and outdoor and in through the outdoor and all that stuff. So yeah, I understand that as well. So I'm not going to hate on eHex or steer people away from it necessarily. I mean, I would be lying if I said that I'd been DCing into it in the same way I had the other RH, main tokens for sure. But I still got some exposure to it whenever it was killed down like that. So